Okay. Welcome to our third topology workshop. Today, Ceyhun Elmacıoğlu is our third speaker about topology, and he is undergraduate math student at Lafayette College, and his topic is vanishing of the third spin Cobordism group. Okay, Ceyhun, if you want, you can introduce yourself and you can start.
Thank you. I'm Ceyhun. I'm a third-year undergraduate student from Lafayette College. I'm specifically interested in topology and geometry, so I want to talk about one of the theorems that I really like from specifically for it's about four manifold Kirby calculus, and actually it's actually about three manifolds, but the proof will be using tools from four manifolds, as you're going to see. If you're interested in four manifolds, and also this proof is from this book, Four Manifolds and Kirby Calculus by Gomf and Stipschitz is a great source. And this approach, this proof has, this theorem has many proofs in of course, different approaches. And this specific approach uses links and knot theory and Kirby calculus. And this specific approach can be found in Gomf and Stipschitz's book. So today, first we're going to a game plan. So first we're going to talk about handles and Kirby diagrams just to have some background, and then Dane surgery, which is a way to create three manifolds from create new three manifolds from old ones using knots, basically. And then we're going to talk about spin structures, which is basically the main structure that we want to understand in this theorem, and then specifically spin structures on three manifolds. And at the end, we will have all the tools necessary to prove this theorem. So let's start from handles and Kirby diagrams. So I will do most of the things in 4 dimensions, but everything can be generalized. But in general, a k-dimensional let's say an n-dimensional K handle is a dk cross, so here D is a disk, dk cross dn minus k attached to something. So you attach a handle. So for example, let's say we have an n-dimensional disk. So let's say this is the n. So what we do is we attach a dk cross dn minus k along the boundary, but not exactly the boundary, but so attached along sk minus 1 cross dn minus k. So when you look at this definition, it doesn't really make that much sense because it's hard to imagine these kind of things in higher dimensions. But an easy example would be to try to let's try to understand what is going on in 3 dimensions. So a 3-dimensional, let's say 2 handle would be, according to this definition, it would be a d2 cross d1 attached along and S1 cross D1. So a D2 cross D1 is basically a 3-dimensional ball. We can think of it as like this. Why? Because I'm thinking of it in this funny way. So you can think of this as like a plate upside down, which is a bit thick. So in this image, the S1 part is this S1. The D1 part is this D1. So basically, I'm perturbing this D2 cross D1 so that the part we're attaching along S1 cross D1 is at the bottom. And then if we take a three-dimensional ball here, let's say, then we can just attach it on top of the ball we already have. So when you look at this definition the first time, it doesn't seem like it could be important because it's very obvious. Like, what exactly are we doing here? We're just naming things. But it turns out that using something called Morse theory, we can create every compact manifold using these handles in the following sense. So if we have a manifold M compact, then there is a function f. Let me write it here. There's a function f from M to R such that, so let's say our manifold is like this, right? So we have f to R. The idea is that if we have an n-dimensional manifold, so let's say M is an n-dimensional manifold, then we should be able to start with an n-ball, an n-dimensional ball, attach some different handles on it, and then get M at the end. And the way to do that, what one can prove using Morse theory, is that we can find such a function f, such that when we look at the critical points of this function, these critical points correspond to the parts where we attach handles. So basically what we're doing is, so here at this level, so everything below this, we have nothing for M. So this is M, right? And then when we cross the first critical point from the bottom, we attach an n-dimensional ball. And then we cross another critical point, and then there's something called an index of a critical point. Let's say the index of this critical point is K. Then when we cross this critical point, then we attach an n-dimensional K handle. And then we continue, and then we continue. And we can do this for any manifold. We can find such an F. Actually, these Fs are not rare. There are so many of these. Moreover, we can also make sure that these critical points are lined up in a specific way. Meaning, if this, so we have R here, right? We can make sure that all critical points along which we attach a K handle, let's say a 0 handle, is in the 0 level. And then all the critical points along which we attach a 1 handle are at the, so their image under F is 1, and so on. So this is called a self-indexing. So we can make sure that F, moreover, F is self-indexing. Which makes sense because the index of the point, index of the critical point is equal to the image of this critical point under F. So this means that understanding handles, we can understand manifolds. And this is very useful because in math, we're used to building things step by step. So for example, in topology, when you take algebraic topology, you want to understand homology groups or something. The first thing you will learn are the CW complexes, because on CW complexes, most of the time you can do induction. You can assume something for the n skeleton, and you can move to the n+1 skeleton, and so on. So this step-by-step process is in some sense very useful in topology. Okay. So in this specific case, So let's try to understand. Let's try to classify these handles. So what we do is, let's say we already have an M. Of course, I'm drawing a three-dimensional ball, but this is an n-dimensional manifold. And then we attach a dk cross dn minus k along sk minus 1 cross dn minus k. So if we were to draw this sk minus 1 cross dn minus k, it would look something like, so in the lower dimensions, for example, so let's say k is 2 and n is 4. So we're working with four-dimensional manifolds and we're attaching a two handle. So this would look like, so, and then this S1 cross SK minus 1 cross dn minus k becomes an S1 cross D2, right? So this is a, this is a torus, which is not hollow. So it is filled. The inside is filled, right? So we are going to attach this handle. So we already have an handle, and we are attaching another hand. We already have a manifold, and we are attaching a handle to it. And it's obvious that the only important thing about this handle, so if you want to classify these handles, we need to understand this attaching region, which is this SK minus 1 cross dn minus k. So understanding how we attach this handle classifies everything about these handles. So how are we going to do that? So first of all, in this specific example, for example, when k is equal to n and n is equal to 4, we have this S1 in the middle. And then you should think about it this way. When you're attaching this torus to a four-dimensional, so you have M, which is four-dimensional, right? And then you're attaching this S1, so we're talking about four manifolds now. S1 cross D2 is attached along the boundary of this manifold, this four-dimensional manifold. So it's attached on the boundary of M4, which is a three-dimensional manifold. And in this specific case, where we have M as just a four-ball, then we would have a three-sphere, and a three-sphere looks like an R3 locally. So basically, you have this R3 around you, and you want to define this filled torus in this R3. And the way to do that, the only way you can do that is you have this sphere, you have this S1 in the middle, this S1 that we just mentioned. So you have this S1, and then you need to define a way to attach the rest of the torus along this S1. So basically, at every point of this S1, you are choosing ways where you are saying, okay, this is the orientation I'm choosing at this point. And another point, you are choosing another orientation. And another point, you are choosing another orientation. Because at the end, you could twist this torus as many times as you want to. In the general case, so what are we doing here? These we could assume that, so if this is this is called a framing. If this framing, we have this framing at a point, we can assume that this framing is orthogonal, right? So like so these two framings are these two vectors are basically defining a direction, an outward direction. If you're familiar with the normal bundle, we are basically choosing a normal bundle for this torus in the three-dimensional space. So we can assume that, so because this, we can assume that these are orthogonal because we can determine the same information using orthogonal vectors. So basically, we are choosing a path, an S1, in the space which consists of points, and every point corresponds to a set of two vectors. in the three-dimensional space. And in the general case, this means that a framing is determined by, so we were looking at an S1, which is an SK minus 1 in the general case. So we are looking at the K minus first homotopy group. So we assume that these vectors were orthogonal. So we can assume that we are in the orthogonal group. And in this specific case, we had S1 cross D2, and we chose two vectors. In the general case, we have dn minus k, right? So we are choosing n minus k vectors. So a framing of a handle is determined by the k minus first homotopy group of the orthogonal group. And in the specific case, so in 4D, this is pi 1 of O2, which is pi 1 of S1, which is Z. Okay, great. So basically, when we're creating a four-dimensional manifold from a ball, and when we attach a two-handle, for example, this two-handle is going to be attached along an S1. So this S1 is going to be a knot, right? So it doesn't have to be an usual S1. And we're going to determine the framing with a number. So, and this number is going to be an N in Z. You can think of this N as like how many times we twist around this circle. Okay, so this was the handle part. So what are the facts? We can understand manifolds using handles, and in the specific case where we're in the four-dimensional, we're working with four-dimensional manifolds, and we attach a two-handle, we can attach this two-handle along a knot and an integer assigned to this knot. Okay, so so the next thing I want to talk about is the question. So the title of the talk is The Vanishing of the Third Spin Cobordism Group. We're going to talk about the spin structures later on, but what's a cobordism? A cobordism between two n-dimensional manifolds is, so we say that, let's put it this way. So two n-dimensional manifolds are cobordant if there exists an n plus one dimensional manifold W such that the boundary of Wn plus 1 is M1 union M2. So the picture you should have in mind is like we have an M1, and then we have an M2, and then we have some W between them. So for example, two circles are cobordant. Two circles are cobordant with a single circle, because you can basically like think of it as like a trouser. So we want to understand we want to understand manifolds of the cobordism. So we want to say that if we choose a representative from each cobordism class, what would we have at the end? Because it's obvious that if M1 is cobordant to M2 and M2 is cobordant to M3, then of course M1 is cobordant to M3. You just stack things up. And the cobordism group, so the n-dimensional cobordism group is so this will be, so we have n-dimensional manifolds up to cobordism, and the group structure is just taking unions. So if you have two cobordism classes and you want to add them up, then their union. So this is how we define the addition in this group. Okay, so we want to understand cobordisms. We want to understand manifolds of the cobordisms. And there's this beautiful fact. Oh, and also realize that and okay, let me put it this way. So we say that M is null-cobordant. If so this is n-dimensional, there's an n+1 dimensional, such that the boundary of W is M. Or in other words, M is cobordant to the empty set. So if a manifold can be realized at the boundary of another manifold that have one higher dimensional manifold, then we say that this manifold is null-cobordant. Okay, so there's this beautiful theorem by Rocklin, which says that for the specific case of 3, this is 0, which means that every three-dimensional manifold is every three-dimensional manifold can be realized at the boundary of a four-dimensional manifold. So we are going to use this fact. This will be very important in the rest of this talk. Okay. By the way, I'm assuming everything is oriented. So like this theorem is specifically for oriented manifolds. So yeah. Okay. So part 1, surgery. Okay. So a definition that makes our lives easier is an n-dimensional manifold M4 is a 2-handle body if it can be decomposed as a union of 0 and 2 handles. So we said, so since M is a 4-dimensional manifold, when we find a Morse function like we talked about before, like here, right? So we are going to have 0 handles, 1 handles, 2 handles, and 3 handles, and 4 handles. And we say that M is a 2-handle body if it can be decomposed as a union of 0 handles and 2 handles. Which means that we can get rid of the 1 handles and 3 handles. So okay. So for the Dane surgery, what we want to do is we take a 3-manifold. So M is a manifold, and we choose a K in it. So K is a knot. What we're going to do is, so this K has a tubular neighborhood, right? So this, if we have the same knot, because I can't draw in another knot. So this has a tubular neighborhood. Here in the 3-manifold. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose a knot. We're going to remove this tubular neighborhood. And so this tubular neighborhood is homeomorphic to a torus, a filled torus. We are going to attach this torus back again to create another 3-manifold, because we could remove this and then we could put it after twisting many times, and then it's going to give us a new 3-dimensional manifold. So is it not? Okay, I'm not going to write that part. So this is called a Dane surgery. Sorry. Dane surgery is removing the tubular neighborhood of K, which we denote like that, and attaching S1 cross D2. That's what we're going to do. Okay, so if we were to look at the handle the composition of S1 cross D2, it would look like something like this. So let me jump better. So we have the S1 cross S1, which is a boundary of this. So this is filled, right? This is filled. We have this S1 cross S1. Then we attach a two handle here, which is going to be like this, but it will be thick. My drawing is not that good, but you get the point, right? So we got rid of that part. And the rest, so this is a two handle. And the rest, so the rest is the inside of this torus, except the part where we already put the two handle is going to be filled with a three handle. And once we know how we attach this two handle, there's only one way we can attach the three handle. So basically everything about this Dane surgery is determined by how we attach this two handle. This two handle is attached on S1 cross S1. So it is enough to understand what's going on with this, with the boundary. So this red part is where we are attaching this two handle to the S1 cross S1. Let's call this alpha, the part where we attach the two handle. So it is clear that if we have two alphas, if alpha 1 is in alpha 2 in the homology group, the first homology group of S1 cross S1, then like if they're homologous, then we can perturb one into the other. So it is clear that these the manifolds we get after the Dane surgery are equal. So in some sense, we can just look at we can just look at H1, the first homology group of S1 cross S1, which is Z. Okay. Also, it is clear that if we can't have an alpha such that, so these are two numbers, right? For each alpha, this will give us a P and a Q. It is clear that these P and Q they have to be co-prime, because this alpha is just like, it's not 2 times or 3 times or 5 times an element in this homology group. It's just a loop in S1 cross S1. It's not a multiple of anything. So P and Q are co-prime. So this means that it would be a nice idea to look at the ratio, because then like we don't really care about, we don't really have any common multiples. So we look at P over Q. But the only issue is maybe P and Q, they have different signs, maybe they had the same sign, and the signs, maybe this P over Q is not an invariant of alpha. Maybe it's an invariant of something else. But what determines the sign? Sign is determined by orientation. So we have to look at the orientations that we chose. So the orientations that we chose are, so we had this K along which we are doing this Dane surgery, or alpha. Maybe we chose alpha counterclockwise way or the clockwise. But it is clear that if we change the orientation, so orientation change of K or alpha changes the sign of P and Q, both of them. So P over Q is actually an invariant of alpha. So basically, Dane surgery is the Dane surgery along K is uniquely determined by this P over Q in rational numbers union infinity, because maybe maybe Q is 0. Okay. But so what are these P and Q? So this P and Q came from the homology group of S1 cross S1, right? So this the Q part is the number of times this alpha goes around the torus. So the first part is like how many times it rolls around this way, and the second one is like how many times it rolls around this way. If you remember what we talked about for the two handles of four manifolds, we said we had a knot, like just like this. We had a knot, and we attached a two handle along this knot, and then we had a number assigned to it. But in that specific case, when we have a torus, we chose a torus, right? But in that specific case, we don't actually we don't actually go around this torus more than one time. Like it's only one time. For every two handle, we go around this torus only one time. So it means that in the specific case, so in the case of a two handle attached to a four-dimensional manifold, this Q is 1 or minus 1. We don't care. Which means that Dane surgeries in the specific case where we have the boundary of a four manifold are determined by this P uniquely, and this P is equal to the framing number we had from pi 1 of O2, which was Z. Okay, why did we need these? Because we need the following theorem, which is very important, and we will come back to this, so I'm going to call it theorem 1. So we already knew that every three manifold can be realized as the boundary of a four manifold by Rockley's theorem. This theorem says that every three manifold M can be realized as the boundary of a two-handle body. So if you remember, a two-handle body was a four-dimensional manifold with only two handles. So this means that a two-handle body X4. So this theorem is telling us that, so we have Rockley's theorem, M can be realized as the boundary of a four-dimensional manifold. Moreover, we can make sure that this four-dimensional manifold has no one handles or three handles. Okay, let's talk about the proof. Okay, so by Rockley's theorem, we can choose an X such that M is the boundary of X. So the union of 0 and 1 handles is, so 0 handles are four-dimensional balls, and 1 handles are, if you remember, it is D1 cross D3. And the boundary, yes, sorry. So the 1 handles are D1 cross D3, and the 0 handle is a D4. So we have a D4, and we attached a D1 cross D3. We have many 1 handles. This means that X, and I'm going to use this notation for, so this means just the union of 0 handles on 1 handles. If I wrote X subscript 2, or X restriction to 2, that would mean the 0 handles, 1 handles, and 2 handles. So this is a boundary connect sum S1 cross B3, because we had the B4 and we attached, let me put it on the manifold, we attached two handles. So basically we have this S1, and then around this S1, at every point we have a D3, and we have many of these two handles. So this is a boundary connect sum of S1 cross D3. Okay, the point is that we can replace each of these S1 cross D3s by an S2 cross D2. So replace S1 cross D3 with S2 cross D2. So this is definitely going to change the four-dimensional manifold, right? Because basically, so S2 cross D2 is something completely different than S1 cross D3. But the point is, if you look at the boundary of S1 cross D3, this is S1 cross S2. And the boundary of S2 cross D1 is S2 cross S1. And these two things are equal. So when we, and what we're doing is, like, when I say replace, I mean, like, we are doing basically like a Dane surgery here. And the idea is we are changing X, but we're not changing M. So if we call this new manifold X prime, then the boundary of X, if you call this manifold X prime, then M is the boundary of X prime. But now we got rid of all the one handles, because we had one handles in here, but these come from two handles. Because when you have a two handle, this is not the right image, sorry. Let me put it this way. And one handle is like this. And the two handle is like this. So in the one handle case here, we had an S1 and a D3 around it. In this case, we have an S2 here. Let me maybe zoom in. We have an S2, and at every point we have a D2. So we are basically replacing one handles with two handles. So we got rid of all the one handles. And the trick is, so now X1 and X prime has no one handles. So remember that for every X, for every four-dimensional manifold, we had a Morse function where we had the manifold, we had R, and then we had like 0 handles, 1 handles, 2 handles, 3 handles, right? And 4 handles. So now we got rid of the 1 handles. So we had this F. But if you just reverse the sign of F, if you just make it upside down, then these 3 handles will become 1 handles of the upside down image. So using the same method, we can get rid of the 3 handles as well. And we don't have a 4 handle, because a 4 handle would like cap off the 4 manifold and it wouldn't have a boundary. That's not the case. We have the boundary as M. So at the end, we only have 0 handles and 2 handles. So this proves this theorem, because we got rid of all the handles and we can see M as a boundary of a 2-handle body X4. So this will be very useful, because if you remember, we said 2 handles are classified by the knots along which we attach these 2 handles. So basically, we had this problem about 3 manifolds, and we reduced this problem to a problem in knot theory or link theory. So that was the purpose of this section. If you move on, so this is spin structures. Okay, so let's say we have a vector bundle on a manifold, and we denote and as I said, okay, this is a vector bundle, and xn is the n skeleton as a CW complex skeleton of x. Okay. So here's what we want to do. Okay, remarks. If we restrict this this E to x1, so E restricted to x1, this is trivial. It is trivial. Why? Because so x1 is a bunch of like points, and then we have these one cells connecting the zero cells, right? So this has to be trivial because, okay, there's no issue with points connecting different points, different zero cells. The only problem would be maybe here, but this will not be an issue either because we assume that this bundle is again oriented. If we were to find a path where we start and then we come back and the trivialization doesn't work, then our bundle wouldn't be trivial. So actually this is an if and only statement. Bundles orientable if and only if the restriction to the one skeleton is trivial. Okay, let's call this trivialization. Tau. So we want to extend this trivialization tau to the two skeleton. So the question is, does tau extend to the restriction to the two skeleton? And this doesn't really need to be true. We want to come up with an obstruction that determines whether such an extension exists. And the main definition of this talk, which came after 45 minutes, is a spin structure on this vector bundle E is an extension, let's say, trivialization of E x2. So the idea is whether we can extend this trivialization to the two skeleton, which doesn't have to be the case. So not all manifolds have a spin structure on them. So when I say, let's say, so a manifold. So when we say a manifold has a spin structure, if the tangent bundle as well. And in the specific case of three-dimensional manifolds, this is a well-known theorem. the tangent bundle of any three-dimensional manifold is trivial. So specifically, like in particular, if we restrict this bundle, this tangent bundle, to the two skeleton, we do have a trivialization, and that will be a constructor on this three-dimensional manifold. Okay, so we want to extend this tau to the two skeleton, and there's a construction which will give us a cohomological obstruction. Okay, so tau is trivialization. The restriction to x1, right? Okay, so then we have two cells. We have a 0 cell, we have a 1 cell, everything is happening in x here, and then we have a 2 cell. And we want to see whether this tau restricts from the boundary of this 2 cell to the inside of the 2 cell, to the part where we're attaching when we attach a 2 cell. But since, so let's call this 2 handle to the 2 cell H2. Since H2 is trivial, is contractible, if we restrict the bundle to H2, it must be trivial. Any vector bundle over any contractible space is always trivial, because you can like contract the base, and when you're contracting the base, you're contracting the total space as well. So you're getting a trivial bundle. So basically, we are going to get a trivialization from this fact that we have a trivialization here, like the fact that the restriction of E to H2 is trivial. And we also have a trivialization from tau. So at every point, we are going to have a trivialization from tau as well. And at every point, we can consider, so we have the orange, which comes from tau, we have the green, which comes from the trivialization itself. We can, so first of all, we can consider them to be equal here. We can pick them, or we can change tau so that the green and the orange are equal. So if they are equal, so if you consider the change of like the matrix that changes from like one framing to the other at every point. So this point, which is the 0 cell, it is the identity, and everything is happening in let me check my math. So let's say this, so this E has rank M, right? If it has rank M, then at every point we have to give M different vectors. So everything is happening in SOM. So in SOM, we have a closed path where at every point we consider the difference between orange and green. So again, we are looking at the fundamental group of SOM. And this is Z2 for large enough M. For M greater than 3, greater than or equal to 3, this is Z2. But if we want this tau to extend to this 2 cell, we need this value to be 0. If that's not the case, then we can't just pull this to the identity and make sure that tau extends. So we have the statement that tau extends over H2 if and only if the corresponding element, which I'm going to call C tau, is 0 in Z2. Sorry, not C tau yet. If the corresponding element element is 0. Okay, here's a nice thing. We have, if we consider the two cochains of X, Z2, what is this? This is by definition homomorphisms from two chains of X to Z2. And from CW homology, we know that this is the set of two cells of X. So H2 is here. But above, what we did was to every H2, we attached the number from Z2. So we determined the homomorphism from 8. We determined the homomorphism from the two chains here to Z2. So for tau, this gives us two cochain here. This is nice. We wanted to get a cohomological invariant, and we have we have an element in cochain which corresponds to tau. Okay, this is nice. So maybe there's another tau for which, so, and also tau extends over the two skeleton if and only if the C tau is 0, because we want every element to be 0. But maybe for this tau, C tau is not 0, but there's another tau for which C tau is 0, and then we can extend. So this specific tau, this specific C tau, doesn't really tell us anything about the existence of a spin structure. Maybe there's another tau and we made a bad choice. So the rest of this construction, which I'm not going to talk about here, gives us, tells us the following. So I'm going to tell this, let's call this a lemma. For the fixed for this fixed vector bundle, the cohomology class of C tau does not depend on tau. So we could change tau, we would not get a different cohomology class. Also, just to make sure like this is not skimmed over, I just showed that this is a two cochain. I didn't show that this is a two cocycle. So it is not even obvious that this will give us a cohomology class. But it turns out that it's a two cocycle, and then it turns out that if we choose another tau prime, then C tau, so C tau minus C tau prime is a coboundary. This is basically a translation of this fact is this. Okay, nice. So the definition is this class, which we write as this, here is the second Stiefel-Whitney class. This is just a definition. Stiefel-Whitney classes are characteristic classes in general, and this is just a specific instance of this idea. Okay. Third. Structures. Three manifolds. this will be very brief because I don't have much time. But the idea is that there is, so if we have y, if we have x, which is y union some handle, then this is how I wrote it, yes. Then there is a cohomology class, which I denote by, let me make sure my notation is S, such that a spin structure S on the restriction of e to y extends to x, x, if and only if this class is 0. And this class is, as you can imagine, it is from the relative cohomology class. So the same construction that we did for the second Stiefel-Whitney class works, and we get a relative class which determines, again, like, can we do this thing step by step? Okay. Here's a nice fact. From Poincare duality, we know that this group is isomorphic to the second homology group. So, sorry, let me put it this way. So if x, if y is a boundary of x, then, because we are interested in the specific case where y is the boundary of x, we have a spin structure on a 3-manifold, and we try to extend the spin structure to the 4-manifold. That will be the main theorem. So if y is a boundary of x, then x, y, this is isomorphic to, of course, let's put the dimensions here. So this is true in the 4 dimensions specifically. This will be the homology class of x, the second homology group of x. But so x is a 2-handle body, right? So we had a ball, a 4-dimensional ball, D4, and then B attached, 2 handles. And it is clear that every homology class, so what's a homology class? A generator of this homology group is going to be a sphere, an S2 in this 4-dimensional manifold. And it's going to be a sphere that looks like this. It will be up there and then here. So, but so the homology class is determined by the knot. So here, like here, we have a knot K along which we attach this 2-handle. So we attach this 2-handle along a knot, and this knot determines a generator of the second homology group. So this means that we can think of this. What was the notation again? Yes, this relative cohomology class as a link, as a sublink. Let's call it L prime of L, where L is the union of knots along which we attach two handles to get X. So basically, we have this class, which is a cohomology class, which we know that is equal to 0 if and only if this S, the spin structure, extends to X. And this class corresponds to a sublink of the link along which we attach two handles. So S extends to X if and only if this class is 0, if and only if L prime is empty. So it is enough to prove that this L prime can be chosen to be empty. And this L prime is called a characteristic sublink. This is called a characteristic sublink. And it has this following nice property. So the linking number of L prime with Ki is equal to this. So the linking number of the knot with itself, which is that little integer we wrote next to the knot along which we attach the two handle, for all components Ki of L. Okay, so if we can prove that this L prime is empty, then we are done. Great. So finally, the proof. Or proof. We're going to need two lemmas. I will not be able to prove these because I don't have time, but so when we have two handles, we can attach, so we have a handle here, we have another handle here. We can attach, we can slide this handle over the other one to get something like this. So we're sliding one onto the other. And this lemma tells us that if we, so let's say, so color L prime and L difference L prime different colors. So we have two different, so we have a link and it is colored with two different colors. So this tells us that if we slide H1 over H2, so this changes color if and only if changes color of K2. So K2 is the knot, so isn't here. So this is K1, so this is K1, and this is K2. Sorry, the other way. So this is K2 and this is K1. Color of K2 if and only if K1 is in L prime. So this basically characterizes what happens when we slide handles. The only change is going to happen if K1 is in the characteristic sublink. So we have the L prime component of L prime and it slides over another component of L, and then this this component which we're sliding over is going to change color in this, only in this case. And then first I need to say what. So if we have So if we have X, then we can add a CP2 to it, maybe with the user orientation or the other orientation. And CP2 is attached along a knot, an unknot, and this unknot has, and so CP2 is attached along so the unknot has framing 1 for CP2, and this is called a blow up. So this is a blow up. And the same way, if we have an unknot with framing +1 or -1, doesn't matter, then we can blow down and get rid of this component. And this new lemma says that okay, so after blowing up, let's call this K. So K is going to, so we blow up and then we handle slide a bunch, right? So we have K, we have L prime here, and then we handle slide many components of L prime and L in general over K. So this is going to give us the following. After blowing up, K is going to be in the characteristic sublink the L prime, if and only if the linking number K and L prime is even. Okay, so now basically we have a 4 manifold and we have a boundary manifold, and we have a bunch of operations. We have a blow up, we have a sliding over, and we know what changes with L prime when we do those. So here's the proof. Okay. So we have, maybe I should draw it like this. We have X, which is a two handle body. We have an M, and this is a boundary, and we have a spin structure. So S spin structure on M, and we want to extend the spin structure to X. We want to prove that the characteristic sublink, so we have L prime, which is not empty right now. If it's empty, we're done. If it's not empty, so we want to L prime, so we want to make a bunch of moves and turn L prime into the empty set. This is what we want to do. So first of all, with lemma 1, so we have H1, H2, we slide it over, and if K1 is in L prime, then K2 is going to change color. So choose a component K1 of L prime, slide it over every component of L prime. So every L prime, so all those components will be out of L prime at the end, and you're going to have just K1 left in L prime, which is going to be the only component of the sublink. So we can assume L prime is just a K0. It's just a knot. It's not a link anymore. We can assume that it's K0 because we got rid of all the other parts. And we are not changing anything. When we handle slide, we are not changing the boundary. When we blow up, we are not changing the boundary. Okay, so now we have this K0, which is a knot, but it might be not it's not necessarily the unknot, and we want to get rid of the crossings. The way we're going to do this is, if we have a crossing, we're going to have a blow up. So this is a blow up. And we're going to, so handle slide, we're going to handle slide this blow up to both components. And you can check it by yourself that when we slide, we get, let's see if I can draw it. Sorry. So maybe we have this blow up here, but we change the crossing. We have the left crossing and now we have the right crossing. So we change the crossing. And the nice thing is that, but not the nice thing. The bad thing is that we have to add this blow up, which let's call it K1, to our characteristic sublink, because the linking number of K1 with K0 is even. And by lemma 2, since it's even, the blown up knot is going to be added to the characteristic sublink. So K1 is in L prime. So now we have an unknotted, unknot K0, and then we have a bunch of knots which looks like this, and we can see those as bands. And it turns out that using the same technique, blowing up and handle sliding, we can assume that these bands, like here, are also, they are not tangled with each other. We can assume that these bands are separate from each other. So at the end, this gives us a picture like this. So we have, let me look at it. Yes. That. So this is N. So we have a band, we have K0, and we have a bunch of bands like this. And they are tangled within each other. They are not tangled with each other, but they are tangled within each other. So we have an N1, we have an NK, whatever, and this is the image. Okay. It's almost over. So finally, we want to get rid of these tangles, right? We want to get rid of these tangles. Turns out there's a way to do that as well. I mean, maybe like 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes.
Yes, just 1 minute. 1 minute you have.
Okay, thank you. So we have this image. By blowing up again, just like we got rid of the crossings using blow-ups here, we can get rid of the self-crossings of the band here by blow-ups. So at the end, we are going to have an image like this. So we have this, and we have this knot that goes through it, but it is pretty clear that this is an unlink. There's nothing to see here. And if you check the framings, then we are going to have something like this. This will have, so this is the unlink. This has framing N. This has framing 1 or -1. This has framing 1 or -1. Okay, now by handle sliding, when you handle slide this component over the other one, you can get rid of this N, so you can make it an N-1. So by using this, so first of all, get rid of all the other components. Get rid of these components, just blow down. When you blow down, we know that we can blow down and we are not changing the boundary. So there are only 2 components left, which one of them has framing N, the other one has ±1. Handle slide this ±1 over N. When you handle slide, you have to add the framings because you're twisting when you handle slide. You're twisting like the handle you're handle sliding over. So you can get rid of, so you can make this N-1 and so on. So at the end, we are going to have a ±1, a ±1, and we blow down. And we get nothing. So basically, since L prime, which is a characteristic sublink, is nothing, then the relative class is 0. So S extends over X, and So X has a spin structure as well, and the boundary of X is M3, and the spin structure just restricts from X to S. So the third spin cobordism group is 0. Basically, for every 3 manifold, we can find a 4 manifold, for which the spin structure of M extends to this 4 manifold, and we can write this 3 manifold as a boundary, this 4 manifold with the corresponding spin structure. And this is the proof that the third spin cobordism group vanishes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ceyhun, for all this beautiful informations. Okay, so we can take a souvenir photo. And other guys, Gizem and Mert and Gülşah, you can open your cameras.
Okay, should I stop sharing my screen? Right.
Yes, you can close your screen.
Okay.
Okay. I am taking 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Ne alabildim değil mi? Bu arada yayını kapatıyorum ben.
Hemen fotoğrafı aldım ama yine de bir 2 saniye kontrol edebilir miyim? Yayın kapandı mı bu arada?